This talk is dedicated to the memory of our late club president, Pat Murphy. Today I'm going to talk to you about two photographs. One is this one here. It's the 1921 Celebrate Kildare Hurling Championship winning team. Match was played on the 29th of April 1923. The second picture is of Art O'Connor, who was club chairman over 100 years ago. Okay. This is a story that involves the most famous athlete in the world in his day, a government minister, a president of the Republic, All-Ireland winning players, Kildare hurlers, James Joyce's Ulysses, and much, much more. Okay? Now, to put things in context, we got to remember the times that these people lived in. They lived through two world wars, Easter Rising, War of Independence, Civil War, much, much more. At the same time, they were trying to live their lives, raise their families, get on with their daily activities, including playing sport. Their lives were absolutely extraordinary. Many of them were revolutionaries, many of them were outstanding athletes. So we'll just take them one by one. The first person is Owen Skipper Murphy. Owen was the captain of the team in 1921. He's the person here, he's the player here, standing at the far left with a cigarette in his mouth. The Murphy family are synonymous with the club. His son, Pat, is our late president. Jack, Oni, Trish, all part of the family. Generations and generations have played and been involved in the administration of the club. Owen was an unbelievable hurler and footballer. He played for 30 years for the club. He also played for 20 years for Kildare at various levels in hurling and football. He was an administrator in the club for over 60 years. And on top of that, he was an Irish revolutionary. He was a member of the Irish Volunteers. In January 1921, he was involved in blowing up Selbridge Bridge. Later that year, he was involved in the Ciaran Bridge ambush. Now that attempted ambush could have been one of the most seminal moments in the War of Independence. Over 100 rebels laid in wait at Ciaran Bridge, where they had over 100 metres of the railway line laying in wait to bomb. There was a train coming from Belfast with over 700 British soldiers, and the idea was to explode it and to take as many of them out with the Thompson submachine gun that they had. A reconnaissance plane from Ballindonal saw that they were lying in wait, radioed ahead, and a gunfight ensued, and thankfully nobody was injured. Okay. As part of that ambush, a number of people were imprisoned, including Paddy Healy, one of the members of this team that we'll talk about shortly. Next we have George McGann. Okay. Now George, we believe, is the player here, the centre of the photograph, standing at the back with his hand across his breast. And we believe that that's his brother William standing beside him. Now George was simply a phenomenal athlete. He was an All-Ireland winner in 1919 with Kildare when they beat Galway. He obviously was a member of the Celebrate team in 1921. He was also a fantastic athlete. In addition to playing football for Kildare, he played hurling for Kildare for many years as well, the same as Skipper Murphy, and many other members of this team. George won 11 national athletics titles between 1918 and 1922. He won from distances of 880 yards, which is half a mile. He won the mile steeplechase. He won the 2 miles, the 4 miles, and 2 cross countries as well, thrown in for good measure. To put that in context, he won 11 championships. Sonny O'Sullivan and John Tracy, two of the best athletes this country has ever produced, have won 14 in all their years. In one year, in 1925, George won over 100 races. He was also a policeman, and he won 3 UK, British and Irish championships in a row, and he also represented Ireland in 5 cross-country championships, 5 consecutive years. An unbelievable athlete. I think it's fair to say that the apple didn't fall far from the tree in his family. His two sons, George and Dermot, both played senior rugby. In fact, they played on the same team as our own Eamon Glennon. George's daughter, Maeve, was a senior cricketer, as were all her family. In fact, her son, George McGann's grandson, was a well-known Irish cricketer in the 1990s. He won over 40 caps and was a renowned leg spinner bowler. Maeve herself was an Irish international lawns bowler. George, even though he was born in Meath, as a young child, he moved with his family to Selbridge. They lived in the Roundy House at the bottom of Main Street, right on the edge, beside the entrance to Castleton Estate. That was because his father was the groom working for the estate at the time. He's buried, along with his brother, in Doncrumper. Next, we'll talk about Albert O'Neill. Now, we believe this gentleman, back right, player, back right, beside the man with the bluish tweed cap, is Albert O'Neill. Albert was another very famous athlete, another hurler and footballer from Kildare. He won, again, he was on the 1919 team that won the All-Ireland. He was known as Little Albert because of his diminutive size. He played many times for the Kildare Hurlers. He was the brother-in-law of Paddy Healy, who was also in this photograph. Albert got married in 1927 to Catherine, and unfortunately 8 months later she died of tuberculosis. On the occasion of his marriage, because he was so held in such high esteem within Kildare GAA, the Kildare GAA board presented him with a beautiful clock engraved with the occasion, on the occasion of his marriage. And believe it or not, that clock is still in existence, and it sits on the mantelpiece in Pat Murphy's house. Next we'll talk about Mick Salmon. Now Mick Salmon, for most people, should need no introduction. We believe that Mick is the man dressed in the suit on the far right of the photograph with the watch chain and his hands in his pockets. Now Mick was the referee for Bloody Sunday in November 1920. Again, he won an All-Ireland with Kildare in 1919. He moved to Selbridge in 1922, where he bought the Railway Hotel, which is now McNamee's Lodge, at the Abbey Lodge pub, and he became an administrator in Selbridge. Another man with a political background, in 1918 he was imprisoned for reading out the Sinn Féin manifesto after Mass on Ladies' Day, which is the Feast of the Assumption, the 15th of August, outside Kilcullen Church. He was arrested, he was put into prison in Portlaoise, Maryborough, as it was called at the time, in Mountjoy, and in Belfast Jail. He got out in time to play in the 1919 All-Ireland, and also to get involved with Selbridge once he moved here in 1922. He died a few years later at a young age in later life anyway. Next man up is Paddy Healy. Now we're not sure which man Paddy Healy is, but we suspect that it is this man here holding the dog. Now Paddy was another stalwart of Selbridge GAA, brother-in-law of Albert. Paddy was captain of the Kildare Hurlers at one point. We have records to show that he was the captain in 1924 when they were playing Dublin down in Kilkenny in the Leinster Junior Championship. On that same day, George McGann and Albert O'Neill were also in that team. Paddy was involved in this company ambush along with Skipper Murphy. Unfortunately, he was imprisoned as a result of that. In later life, he became a storesman in Ballydonnell, and he was also a very well-known GAA referee. Next up, talk about the Mulligan brothers. So, John and Ned Mulligan are both in this photograph. We can't identify them, unfortunately, because we don't have any reference photographs to try and match them against. But we do know a lot about them. Ned was a huge player for Selbridge. He He was obviously on this team. He was also on the 1936 intermediate football team that won the Kildare Championship. Skipper Murphy was the captain that year as well. Barney Cullen, who was also in this photograph, was the goalie that day. And Ned played many years for Kildare Hurling, for the Kildare Hurling team. His brother John, who was also in this photograph, was an Irish revolutionary. He joined the Irish Volunteers in 1914 after Pádraig Pearse came out here for a rally to kick it off. He was also involved then in the distribution of arms that were landed in Howth in 1915. Next we have Jim Fay. Now we think that Jim was the man here sitting down, second in from the left, holding the slitter. Now Jim is from Maynooth, but at the time Maynooth hurling was at a low ebb, so Jim came over to Celbridge, got involved with the hurlers here, and ended up winning senior championship in 1921. The story goes from his son Tommy that Jim told him that he decided he was going to walk over to Celbridge to get a game of hurling, and he ended up getting a Kildare senior championship. Jim also played hurling with Kildare, and in fact we have found records to show that on the same team in 1923, May 1923, which is just less than 1 month after this team won their championship in April the 29th, 1923, Jim Fay, George McGann, Skipper Murphy, Ned Mulligan, Paddy Healy, Albert O'Neill all played on the one Kildare team that played Offaly in the Leinster Junior Championship. I think that was on the 25th of May 1923, which was only 3 days before the Civil War ended, believe it or not. Jim has the distinction of winning 2 senior hurling championships in Kildare with 2 different clubs, because the 1924 championship final was between Celbridge and Maynooth, but at that stage Jim was back playing with Maynooth and ended up beating them. So he ended up beating his old teammates in that final. 2 different medals, 2 different championships, 2 different clubs. Next we'll talk about Barney Cullen, Tommy Oxo Masterson, Jim King. Now, unfortunately we find it very hard to identify them. We know that they're in this photograph because we're sure that they were part of the team back then. I believe that this may be that man there sitting just to the right of Skipper Murphy, maybe Barney Cullen. Now, Barney was a stalwart of Celbridge GA. He played for many, many years. Again, he was goalie on that team in 1936 that won the Intermediate Football Championship. But like the Mulligans and like the Kings, his family go way back in Celbridge GA history. We know for sure that there was family members playing in the 1906 hurling final, the first final that Celbridge ever got to, against Clane in 1906, which they lost. There was 2 Cullens playing in that, a B Cullen and a C Cullen. There was 3 Mulligans, Patrick Mulligan, P Mulligan and Edward Mulligan, and there was also 2 Kings that we're aware of. Okay, so the family, you can trace them all the way through from the very early stages.